That's true. Naked Palpatine.
Oh, you pick that one. Fresh out of the clone tank, nude Palpatine is my
Well, that's the first thing I think of when you say Dark Empire Palpatine.
Hello everybody, I need a weapon, and welcome back to the Halo EU. I only have two things for you today. First being Halo, it's a Halo comic called The Fall of Reach Boot Camp. This is basically events from the Fall of Reach novel. However, there's less detail here, but some additional scenes that aren't in the book. But mostly just a retelling. Now, why am I reviewing to you something that you can go find in a novel? Well, chronologically, you would read Fall of Reach last before you started playing the video games. Like before you play Halo Reach, before you play Combat Evolved, Halo 2, Halo 3, because Fall of Reach ends exactly where Halo Reach ends, with Reach being destroyed. It goes over a large span of time, like the novel Dark Plagueis if you're a Star Wars Expanded Universe fan, but the main timeline story is the Fall of Reach. Everything else is just backstory. So, chronologically, it's last, in terms of before the video games. However, the comic here, this section only deals with those early times. So, I thought, why not? By the time you've read some more novels, read some more short stories, by the time you actually get to the Fall of Reach, your memory will be slightly hazy on the events, plus you're going to get more in-depth information in the novel anyway, so it'll be a slightly new experience. So I decided to mention it anyway. With the Fall of Reach boot camp, of course it is the year 2517. We learn in the 25th century, so 24 whatever, because we're year 2020. Right now, or we're in 2024 right now, and it's 24, 20, I don't know, 4, let's say, I don't know, it doesn't really matter. All we know is that there was a human empire, like, across all of the solar system that we know of. There was, not like everywhere, but like a good portion of our galaxy was filled with humanity, because we had finally reached the stars. And that's what we did for basically all of the 25th century. But then we made it to the 26th century. And when we made it to the 26th century, we started having people who had issues with the Earth government. Because now you have all these planets, all of these colonies of people, but the people still governing all of them is the ones on Earth. And I don't have the full details for you here, because the comic doesn't really provide that, but there is now a galactic civil war. Think kind of like the original trilogy of Star Wars. There is, except it's kind of reverse, because in Star Wars, the rebels are clearly the heroes, and here it's a bit more gray. There are certainly shady things that the government is doing, but at the same time, the insurrectionists, as they're called in Halo, are not exactly doing completely moral things either. So this is a much more gray area than the Star Wars original trilogy was. So that's what's been going on. There's been terrorist attacks against the government. And of course we get to learn here about kidnapping. They kidnap, basically the government wants to be able to defeat all these insurrectionists, these terrorists. And, their men are kind of spread thin, They want to create something that will stand the test of time beyond this insurrection, and will be able to quell the insurrection and put it to an end. So the Earth government, known as Oni, decides that they are going to kidnap 6-year-old children from their families. I forget the exact number, but it's quite a handful. And they're going to flash clone the kids and drop off the clones with the parents, as if the kids never left. But the thing about that is that, unlike in Star Wars, these clones die after about 6 months. Some may last a little bit longer, maybe a year, maybe a few years. But in the end, because of course you can't have all of them die in 6 months, it'll become a little suspicious. But the point of the matter is that within the next few years, their clone kid, not their kid, will die of natural causes. And that will be checked off the list. You don't have to worry about, long-term programming of a clone or anything. You just have to have them for a few years and let them function, and then gone. And they'll be none the wiser as to that they were fake or not the true ones. Well, the true kids get indoctrinated into the military and train as 6-year-olds. They learn about teamwork. Of course, one of the things we see here is the same thing we see in the novel, which is Dr. Halsey finding John, who would be known as John 117, later known as Master Chief. And there's this whole, and we'll get into it when I get into the Fall of Reach novel as well, but there's this interesting sort of coin game that Halsey plays with him. And it's a very interesting idea, and it's a very fun little introduction to the very cult dynamic that Halsey has with her Spartans, because for all intents and purposes, she is their mother. But then again, she stole them from their actual mothers. So there's this very weird dynamic at play here. We jump ahead 6 years. Master Chief, or John, is our teenager. And he went on one mission to stop some insurrectionists, and he has to deal with, what's the difference between spending lives versus wasting lives. Because he said that's part of being, a leader in a government or in a war. It's not about, because you're going to have to send men out to do things. It's just, and you're going to send people to die. Like, they may not know it, but you know it. It's just a matter of, are you spending their lives well, or are you wasting it? And I thought that was an interesting discussion that was had. And then, of course, we get to see early Spartans killing insurrectionists after being augmented. But it's weird seeing it, because, you're so used to the video games where you're shooting a bunch of aliens, For some reason, that phases you easier than shooting a human, because it's like, those are aliens, they got blue blood, like, I don't care about them. But seeing how effective the Spartans is at killing normal humans is actually kind of disturbing. So that was pretty cool. And that's pretty much it for the comic. I thought it was pretty decent. I don't remember all that stuff being in the novel, so some of it might be new stuff. I don't remember. But for sure, it's definitely a fun little read. If you're going in chronological order, you can just read this here. And then you can have a nice visualization when you get to the Fall of Reach novel. But to the cream of the crop here today, we have a short story from Halo Evolutions Pariah by B.K. Evanson. So this short story is about Soren. Soren's really cool. You're probably wondering who Soren is. Well, if you watch the Halo TV show, Soren's in it. His backstory has nothing to do with it, though. Because, of course, the TV show is the Silver Timeline. It is a separate timeline. So, and don't worry, I appreciate that fact. It's unlike the Star Wars Expanded Universe. It was not just shut down and abandoned and said, here's your new canon. All the other stuff didn't matter. No, this is saying, no, this is something else entirely. Your stuff is the stuff that actually matters. And I do applaud that. But if you're going to make a different adaptation, that to the average viewer who doesn't play video games or doesn't read books is going to see, you either do something of the same caliber or even better than the source material. And nothing that they did surpassed anything in these novels. So why even bother? You had source material, why not just follow it? Why try to do your own thing when it's inherently inferior? I mentioned Soren because I remember watching this phenomenal video by Polygon. It's a big channel on YouTube. I'm sure you know who that is. And this guy, it was mostly a joke bit, but he got excited about watching a show with a character named Soren because he read a short story about him and how much that feels great. Like, that's part of the expanded universe charm of Star Wars before the Disney buyout. Kip Durin from the Jedi Academy trilogy. Oh my god, he's an important role in New Jedi Order. It's stuff like that where you feel like you didn't waste your time reading this short story or that novel because they'll be referenced and matter later on. So you feel like your time was invested in this fictional world. That's what expanded universe, that's what expanding a universe is meant to do. But Soren the actor that plays him did a great job being super, like, he was the best part of season 1 of Halo, the TV show on Paramount. But after reading this, he's such an inferior product to what we could have had. So let's get into the story of Soren in the true canon of Halo. Soren is a 6-year-old. Halsey is having a discussion with him. The story is kind of out of order. But the key here is that she provides Soren a choice, where she didn't provide any of the other kids that. She stole them and took them from their lives. She gave Soren a choice. But is it really a choice? It's between a rock and a hard place. But she still provides that choice, which means every action that comes afterward, instinctively, the burden is now placed on the child instead of the adult who took him. Soren is a 6-year-old boy. Before Halsey finds him, he lived in a small farm with his mother and stepfather. We have no idea what happened to his real father, but what we do know is that his mother was sick and dying from a disease, and his stepfather did not take her to the hospital. So she died. Now, this husband is not a bad man. He is certainly, from what this short story tells us, not inherently in the right state of mind. And instead of dealing with his grief, or instead of being normal, instead of dealing with the fact that she's dead, he locks her in her room and tells her son to not go in there because she's still healing. But a few days go by, a week, a month goes by. The kid decides to be rebellious. He misses his mother. One night, his stepfather is drunk. He steals the keys and finds his mother dead in her room, slowly becoming a corpse. I mean, I guess she was already a corpse, but I mean like a rotting corpse. And Soren is not happy. I don't want to spoil the whole story for you, but he goes and decides, I'm going to stab my stepfather. And he does. And then he runs away. But his stepfather does not die. Years pass. His stepfather gets the same sickness. Goes to get instructed to make it to the hospital. He can't move. He's too weak. And his stepson, who he hasn't seen in all these years, shows up. His stepson could help him get to safety. But he didn't do that for his mother. So he sits there and watches his stepfather for 2 days till he dies and buries him. Imagine that being an episode of television you watched on Paramount Plus. And that's just the opening chapters. He moves on, goes on with Halsey to the Spartan 2 program. Why isn't he in the Fall of Reach? Soren is the exception. Soren was not stolen from his youth, was not stolen from his family. His family was stolen from him. And he also perpetrated some of that. But he got along with the Spartans. He felt like he had a home there. He felt like he finally had family, that he had people that could understand him and relate to him. The Spartan 2 program is about to begin, augmenting children to become super soldiers, to become the Halo's Captain America. Everyone else is going to be taken while they're asleep, drugged, and put into a machine to see if they will survive the Spartan program. But again, because of the unique circumstances surrounding Soren's life, Halsey offers him the choice. She tells him exactly what's going to happen, while admitting several things. But she tells him the gist and the risk involved. And he says yes. But again, she gave the choice to him, therefore putting the burden on him instead of herself for the sins that she has committed. And it does not go well. Soren does become an enhanced human, but he's deformed, looks like a monster. Think Quasimodo from The Hunchback of Notre Dame. Stronger, faster, more intelligent, but hideous to the average fellow. Unlike Spartan John 117 or his friends, who you would have no idea there was anything different about them, outside of their height, I guess. But the cracking point is because of his disabilities, because of his deformities, the government tells him you can't be a part of the Spartan team. You're too unique. They'll be distracted by you. They'll feel a need to protect you more than their other teammates. We'll give you a desk job. Soren then turns to the rebellion, to the insurrection, and joins their side in anger and vengeance. And that's all I'll say as this story. There's a little bit more nuance and detail in between those, but that's the gist. What a phenomenal short story about a character who you probably will never see again. But you know where we could have seen him? You know where we could have expanded upon this character more and given him even more backstory and given him even more development and make him an even greater character than he already was in this short story? In the Halo TV show. But instead they used the name and nothing else. Truly a shame. But regardless of that, the Pariah short story is absolutely incredible, and I highly recommend you buy Halo Evolutions and check that short story out specifically, because it is well worth your time. Anyway, thank you all so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up. Sharing helps out a ton. Don't forget to subscribe. And let's finish the fight. Till next time, when I reread Contact Harvest by Joseph Staten. Till then, guys.